If this is your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or 70th date, just understand that if she does share something with you, you do not necessarily need to say, hey, I have a solution. Right? That is a complete turnoff, because they may just want you to listen, and they'll let you know if they want that insights. One of the things I do, and this is for my guys who are in relationships, one of the things I do often now is I ask, like, hey, babe, you shared this thing. How do you want me to support you? What's the best way to support you in this situation? Do you want me to just listen or give that feedback? I like to be proactive in my conversations. I don't want to be super reactive, because then we kind of default to that person that we show up as normally. I'd rather make sure that I'm working to be better for the best interactions for the both of us.
Coming up on this week's episode of the How to Get a Girl podcast, we dive into emotional intelligence. Why is it sexy? Why do women love it? Why does it guarantee that you will not be seen as an emotional sap and a trauma dumper, as our guest describes today? But it is one of the sexiest things that you can do, having high emotional intelligence. And on this week's episode, we're going to tell you exactly why and how to do it correctly. So keep listening.
Thank you so much for having me, Marnie. You know I'm super excited. I can talk about EQ all day, especially when it comes to helping.
I know you can. And you are the man to talk about it with, to be honest. So I had you on a couple of months ago, or a few months ago, to do a masterclass for my audience that was just absolutely amazing. I've talked to you before. We've worked together a little bit, but seeing you present was just absolutely amazing. It was such a clear masterclass that I felt any man could clearly understand. Oh, Kristen's popping on now. Hopefully her mic works. We were having some issues with Riverside before. Hi, Kristen. Hey, but yeah, so Jevon, can you tell the guys a little bit about what emotional intelligence is? Like, please. How do you get it? Is it learnable? Yeah.
Absolutely.
What is it?
I think this is where a lot of people get wrong on what it is. It is a skill, first and foremost, emotional intelligence. Yes, some of us are naturally have a different disposition to be more emotionally intelligent in certain aspects, right? So there's 5 pillars of emotional intelligence that we'll dive into today. The first is self-awareness. That's the foundation. If we don't know ourselves, it's very hard to connect with anyone else. You may think that you're doing a great job, but if you're not self-aware, how do you truly know? The other component is self-regulation. That's really managing the emotions. So internally, one thing is going on. Externally, how are we filtering ourselves to process before we convey it externally? And then the third is motivation. Like, why is this important to you? A lot of us don't ask that enough. Like, what is the importance of the connection that you're looking to make? And then what drives you just to be a better version of yourself each day? The fourth is empathy. So empathy is that first foray into really understanding the other side. A lot of people say it's putting yourself in the other person's shoes. That's not the whole story. Empathy starts with self-empathy, and the curiosity that comes from that. And we'll dive into that as well. And then the fifth part that we're going to talk about is the social skills, right? Not showing up awkwardly, being able to convey what your messaging is, being able to ask questions to understand the other person's side without personalize it and internalizing it. So there's a lot to emotional intelligence, and we're going to cover as much as we can in this time we have together.
I love it. So again, I know you said this in the beginning when you were explaining, but this is something that you can learn. Anybody right now can learn to have strong or high emotional intelligence, even if they don't feel like they can right now.
Yeah, you just got to be open. I mean, that's where a lot of us mess up, is we're closed-minded. We're like, that's just the way I am, or I've always struggled with that. And those places of permanence or lack of change or lack of wanting to change, that's how we get into trouble. So fellas, I recommend you listen to this and listen a couple of times, because we're going to go deep into how you can change and how you can show up as a better version of yourself to get that lady.
Okay. I do have a question, though, that a lot of guys might be asking themselves. And that question is, okay, if I have more emotional intelligence, doesn't that make me more emotional and therefore weak in a woman's eyes, right? Like, they don't want to become this guy who cries on dates or who emotionally pukes in front of the women that he's trying to attract. So can you explain a little bit about why and how emotional intelligence can be super sexy?
Absolutely. So we can have a whole conversation on just this topic, Marnie.
Yeah.
So yeah, so emotional intelligence is not trauma dumping, first and foremost. It's not saying like, oh, everything you've ever gone through, you're just gonna spew it on top of the person that you're willing to connect with. Emotional intelligence is actually the opposite. It's understanding how to be vulnerable in an intelligent way. And vulnerability, when you leverage it in a perspective of knowing what to share and how to share it, starting small, for one, that's going to allow you to open up, and it gives the other person agency to say, oh, they're willing to share and open up a little bit. Let me share too, so that you can get past that surface level conversation of what's your favorite color, what's your favorite flower, all those things you asked on the first date that really take you nowhere. You want to get past those things so you can be different. If you're asking the same questions as the next guy because that's like the easiest things to say because you're afraid of saying the wrong things, then what separates you outside of looks? And looks are only going to take you a certain distance, and confidence only
Yeah.
takes you a certain distance. So that
Yeah.
emotional intelligence is really about, again, self-awareness, knowing like where your strengths are, what you need to work on, how you show up to those conversations each day, being willing to kind of remove yourself from the conversation a little bit and detaching and not personalizing so you can ask more questions about that lady and get to know her. That's why emotional intelligence is so important. It allows and makes space for that connection and to remove your ego a little bit to make room for you to step in that place with curiosity and understanding that, being the man to this woman does not mean that you have to show up with a bunch of bravado or any of that. You could show up calm, show up clear in your messaging, and show up curious about what matters to her.
Yeah, and it also suggests that you can share a little bit about yourself. You can
Yeah,
open up and be a bit vulnerable and do it in a very attractive way. So, okay,
absolutely.
so I honestly, I just want you to speak this entire podcast because I feel like you're so good at explaining this. So, to the guys that are listening, so most of them are single, or most of them are out of a long term relationship and looking to get into a new relationship. Some may be in a marriage, right, where they're still struggling because there's tension in their relationship and there's a disconnection. I would love for you to give like the the guidance to these guys on how to display emotional intelligence in the beginning stages of dating. Like how can they show this side without, again, becoming emotional saps or having trauma dumping? How do they do this in the proper way that has them seemingly becoming this amazing man that women just obsess over?
Yeah, absolutely. And this applies to all of those different situations and circumstances the men listening are in. When you talk about showing up to a interaction with emotional intelligence, one, confidence is automatically exuded because you have done the work to know yourself. And we can talk about what that works look like from that self-awareness, self-management standpoint. But let's talk about that social interaction side first. So when you show up as an emotionally intelligent man, you're going to show up as someone who, again, that curiosity comes in. You want to know about that woman. You pay attention to what she's doing. You're not on your phone while you're talking to her. You're not checking your watch every 5 minutes because that shows that you're not interested or you're not respecting those spaces, or you feel like there's something more important. That's first and foremost. Show up with attention so you can show intention. That's the first
I
step.
like that.
The second step is think about some predetermined questions that you may ask. If you're someone who struggles with holding a conversation because you feel kind of nervous or awkward, think about a couple of questions that you can show up and say, all right, these are something that I would genuinely be interested in asking so I can get past the questions I said earlier about what's your favorite color. Nothing wrong with those, but at a certain point, we got to get past those surface level
No,
questions,
there's
guys.
there's a
Uh,
lot wrong with
right.
those. There's
Right. So
everything.
so we can ask Kristen said there's a lot wrong. We can ask those, fine. You got to know that for the anniversary, right? To know what you need to get her. But let's
So
dive
true.
deeper. Learn what she cares about. Learn her hobbies. Learn what drives her. What does romance look like in a relationship? Those are the types of things that are really going to separate you and differentiate you. So think about those at least 3 questions you can come up with before you get to that date. The third thing is really understanding that if you ask a question, you should be able to answer that question. So like do
Yeah.
that introspection to discover what's important for you. Take that time to do values alignment so you can ensure that what you're talking about and this person that's in front of you has some values in alignment with yourself. One of the things that helped me when it came to my wife is understanding that, you know, as a man, we also don't have to be a problem solver all the time. She helped me tremendously with that. So when you show up to a woman, if this is your fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, or 70th date, just understand that if she does share something with you, you do not necessarily need to say, hey, I have a solution. Right? That is a complete turnoff because they may just want you to listen and they'll let you know if they want that insights. One of the things I do, and this is for my guys who are in relationships, one of the things I do often now is I ask, like, hey, babe, you shared this thing. How do you want me to support you? What's the best way to support you in this situation? Do you want me to just listen or give that feedback? I like to be proactive in my conversations. I don't want to be super reactive because then we kind of default to that person that we show up as normally. I'd rather make sure that I'm working to be better for the best interactions for the both of us. So we can keep going and going, but I'm going to take a break to see what you got, Marty or Kristen.
No, I want you to keep talking because I just love everything that you. Honestly, this masterclass that Jevon did like a few months ago was just everything that I think is so important for men to hear. So, and the wonderful thing that you highlighted in this masterclass was about how it wasn't just for guys in relationships, which of course having high emotional intelligence is wonderful once
Mm-hmm.
you're in a relationship, but it's equally as important in the beginning stages, and that's what you've been highlighting now. And the thing that I'm hearing the most is that, like, it's to be curious about the other person, but then also have the, I'm going to say emotional intelligence, but have like the capability to share back yourself and give the right amount of information, which
Yes.
is what I would love a little bit of guidance on from you. So let's say you're on a first date and you do have trauma in your background, or you are divorced and you're fighting with your ex-wife still. How do you share just enough, and like how do you have strong emotional intelligence to know how much you can share with that person and know when you can open up more? I'd love to get an understanding because I feel like there's a lot of guys who are listening who are in that stage who are like, I've had this happen, I need them to know it, but I don't want to share too much, and I want to be able to read when I'm sharing too much, like
Yeah.
get the feedback that I'm sharing too much, yeah, or that I've scared her
Absolutely.
away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We don't want to do that if you really like this woman.
Yeah.
So
Well,
one of the
trauma
things,
dumping was a great way of putting it before, because I think that's
yes,
a really great way of thinking it about it. It's like you can trauma dump, which is like giving everything about it and forgetting the other person is there, versus what you're going to instruct people on.
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I want the men listening to understand is like when you step in and you say, I want to be more emotionally intelligent, right? That's just the first part. And what we're talking about here is one, you want to, when you're communicating, active listening is a key component. So active listening is looking, hearing what's not being said, looking at her body language. If you're saying something, paying attention to if she's shifting, if she's looking around, that means that you probably should take a pause on whatever you're saying. Just like I did when I was talking, and I was like, okay, let me take a pause and check in with Marnie and Kristen to see if they have something to add to this or have a question, because you will realize after a while, like, I've been droning on for a little bit, and then you say, all right, any questions or something like that, or you know what, I've been talking for a bit. Let me ask you something. Anything coming up for you? You always want to make space so it's a dialogue versus just you talking at someone. So that's first
Mhm.
and foremost. The second component to this is, you know, one, whatever you're sharing, you should be comfortable sharing that at that point, because you don't want to get to the point where you just start crying or it makes you so livid that you can't even focus. If you're not at that stage, then you may want to rethink just dating at that point in general, because you may want to
Right.
start doing some work on yourself if you have not gotten over that thing. But if it's something that, you know, maybe you've been separated for a bit and you're like, hey, I still have this messy divorce going on. I like this woman and I want her to know that. Then you can literally bring that up. Like, hey, you know what? Before you move forward, I just want to be conscious. I want to make you aware that I am in this situation, and I want to make sure that that's not an impediment to us moving forward for you. If it's, so I would love to talk about that. And you can open that space and saying, I got this thing, I got this thing, I got this thing. Just open that space to make sure that you have that conversation. Then that woman may say, like, you know what? No, that's
Not
okay.
for
Tell
me.
me more about that, huh? Or say that
Yeah,
again,
she may
Marty.
say it's not for me, or yes,
Right,
tell me more
right.
about it.
Tell me more about it, or she could say, "Hey, let's conclude it," and that's good for both of you. Because what is the point of continuing if both of you are not in alignment? Relationship takes both folks to be involved and want to invest in that. So that's what I recommend doing, just up front, just asking, like, "Hey, how do you feel about this situation? Right? Is this something that you can see us growing in, or is it something that I need to resolve before I even think about entertaining it?"
And I want to point out something that you did. Is my mic loud enough? Is it okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
It is.
much better now.
You gave information without too much detail. And I think that's where people get lost with the oversharing and emotional intelligence is like you said, hey, listen, I'm going through this messy divorce and da 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 da. But you didn't go with this one, she's driving me insane and it's been going on for six years and da da, so I
Right.
think to kind of go back to what Marnie was saying, like, how do you know when you're oversharing? It's tricky because women like details, but you want to keep the details to a minimum when it comes to the beginning of stuff that is emotional. But I think as you go, then the stage has been set for more details to be shared.
Yeah,
I
we call
agree.
it in the military. We call it bottom line up front. So I'm going to give you the bottom line right up front. So if you know
Yes.
what's going on, if you want more details, I can give that to you. But there's no point in like dumping something on someone if they never even said, okay, this is something I'm interested in, right? Because that's
Right.
something that is a sensitive topic. So you want to make space to say, are you interested in talking about this sensitive topic, or should we conclude?
And what did you
Yes.
call that again? Top
Bottom line.
Bottom line up
bottom.
front.
I love that.
Bottom line up front. Okay, so what are the steps then for revealing? So let's say the woman's like, "Yeah, I want to hear more," and then you're like, "Okay, well, this bitch just took me for all my money," and like, what, like
Right, right,
how
right.
much do you how like where do you unleash? How like do you go in babies? Like I always say that your information is your information, so hold it tight to the vest, and when the other person proves that they're ready to hear it or that you feel that you're ready to share it, you share it in baby steps. You give them like
Absolutely.
little nuggets and see what they can take. They don't have to hear everything all at once. And I do
100%.
think that like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but women, especially in the beginning stages, they want to hear the details, but they really want to hear that you've got it handled. They don't want to hear that you're swimming in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Is
Absolutely.
that true?
Well, from my standpoint, yes. I mean, because
Yeah.
when you think about a man sharing that type of information, right, the first thing is like, okay, all right, where are you going? So what you want to make sure that you have handled is, and I'm all about being proactive in this situation. So I would like to say, like, hey, I don't want to say too much. If you really don't want to say too much, say that up front. Like, I don't want to say too much, but here's what is pertinent to that person. So, hey, for instance, if you're separated, you're getting a divorce, you could say, well, we have this kid, for instance, right? We have our child who's 16, and one of the things we're working on is, the custody, right? In that custody battle, we still have a couple of months of court, and that's how I would start. Like, if that's something I want to share, then that's where I'm going to stop. But I'm going to preface it with saying, like, I don't feel comfortable sharing too much. This is only our second date. I don't want to dump this all on you. But here's something that I do feel comfortable sharing with. Now, if they keep saying, "Oh, what? Tell me more," right, and it seems like it's just a soap opera to them, then that, as the man, may tell you that this may not be the person for you. They're just looking at you as entertainment at this point. So that's where that
Right.
emotional intelligence really comes in. It's you're paying attention to how she's reacting to what you're saying, or responding if she's emotional intelligent, and then you're going to make sure that you're making space to take in those cues, so when and where you should go as the conversation continues. I
Yeah.
think
But
that
then you
is
can also
very,
decide, right? You
yeah,
get to decide as a
absolutely.
man too. That's enough
Absolutely.
sharing for today. Like, let's like to
That's
be continued on our third date. If you want more information about my divorce trauma, I'll tell you the update on our next date when we go somewhere fun and make out for an hour afterwards. Like,
yeah.
make it more fun.
And it's also important to make sure that this does not monopolize the date. So
Right.
you can say, hey, I don't want to spend too much time on this, right? I really want to get to know you, or I want to learn more about you as well. If you're still interested, like make sure you're
Yeah.
putting those things out there. Like this is not going to be everything that we're talking about. I'm not here to be your entertainment, but I do need you to know this if we are interested in one another. Type of thing.
Right.
And that's where that line between trauma dumping and really sharing pertinent information comes in. Is just
Yeah.
giving those snippets of information to say like this is going on. You don't need all the details right now because we're not at that level. Or I'm still handling it and I'm still trying to figure it out type of thing. So
Yeah.
that's really where we want to make that distinction between that trauma dumping
Okay.
and just being communicative about your situation.
Well, that also says something as well about a man who's not trying to hide that he has
Mhm.
that going on. Is that a part of emotional intelligence as well that you're okay revealing about yourself? Because I feel like a lot of people who I don't know what it is. 'Cause I'm picturing my son actually when I think about this because it's very strange. We are emotional communicators in this family, but yet he he has a tough time expressing himself emotionally. So there's some people who really like just do not understand how to express themselves. Some
Mhm.
people who are uncomfortable with it, and some people who aren't ready to do it for various other reasons, right? Because they have trauma in their background. So I forget where I was even going with this, but
You said if is
you're
that a part of emotional intelligence? And yet the
yeah, is
answer
it a
is yes.
part of emotional intelligence to yeah,
Yep. The answer to that is yes. So when we think about self management, where that self regulation aspect came in that I mentioned at the outset, that's where authenticity and transparency come into play. So when you are having trouble conveying or even starting out by saying something, you may not be able to articulate it how you want it to initially, but even starting to tell someone what's going on, that's where that comes in from the emotional intelligence framework is self management, being able to say, you know what, I got to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is strength in the situation. I'm not really, I want you to like me, but that's not the end all be all for me because I'm comfortable with myself. So that takes a lot of work to get to that point. Even for me, it took me a while to say vulnerability is strength, and my story is my story, and it's not necessarily a hindrance, but it's something that makes me who I am, and I learned from. And I think that's the importance of it. Not understanding mistakes or issues or shortcomings as downfalls, but understanding them as lessons because we all have them.
yeah, but it's
Everyone in life
strengths.
has them. So I believe that if we start leaning in on our story, especially those messy parts of it, then you become more comfortable saying like, hey, I can't take that back. It happened. But what I can do is move forward from it and learn from it. And
Yeah.
hopefully when I tell this story to someone, they can empathize and they feel comfortable enough, supporting me in it, or they feel comfortable enough sharing something that is in their backstory that I should know as their friend or their significant other or spouse. So that's really where that lies.
Yeah, which I love. So do you have any like an anagram or do you have like guidelines for how to express yourself? Like how men should be thinking about it? Cuz I feel like we're very well practiced and when I spit these things out to men, they're just like, "Oh my god, how did you do that so succinctly?" And same thing with you. How should men be thinking about this? So for example, they're going through a messy divorce, right? And it's
Hmm.
about clearly expressing that authentically to a woman, owning it, but also tying it up in a bow saying, I'm dealing with it. I am having a hard time with it, but I have enough capacity and space to date right now because that's my ultimate goal. I would like a new like how do you have guidelines for that of how to think about it? Like express this, then I have to think through that process as well. But do you?
Yeah, and I think that process looks different because you mentioned the key word authenticity. Like
Right.
what's their communication style first and foremost? How do they best communicate? too, because some people, like you mentioned, some people have issues conveying things through speaking. And what I find with clients is if you have trouble conveying things through speaking, like just on the on the fly, maybe you need to kind of process it in a different way first before you convey that message. So you may need to write it out or do a voice note or however you best communicate first to kind of practice what you're going to say and how you're going to communicate that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Again, everything is about being proactive. And if you're more comfortable with making sure you have processed what you wanted to say first before just conveying that, then that's the best way to do it for those people, because that's where a
So
lot
what
of
are the prompts for even writing it down? Like the
yeah.
prompts are
So what I would say, impact first. What is the purpose of you communicating this message? So what's the impact that I'm looking to make with this? So impact, sharing that I'm going through a divorce. Well, the impact is I really like this woman and I want her to understand that, even though this is going on, I still have the capacity to spend time with her and grow with her. That's the impact. So what do I need to say to her? So the first thing I need to say is, hey, this is our second date and I feel like this is a great time for me to let you know that I'm going through this divorce. Now, I don't want this to, I don't want this to ruin our opportunities to get to know one another and grow with one another. But I also want to be respectful of what you think. So I would like to take this time to talk about how you feel now that you have that information. And that's the key. Like the key is to open with a prompt. If you open with that prompt, you have what I call a coaching conversation. Now you can do, answer any questions that may arise. You can also listen to her because we don't need to be talking. Just because it's our issue that we're facing doesn't mean we need to be the one talking, because we know what's going on. Now it's about getting her clarity. So we want to ask like how she's feeling. How do you feel about that? Now that I've told you that, what are your thoughts on that? You've already prompted her and let her know that you want to move forward with her, but now you have to see if she wants to move forward with you. Once you do that, then that's when that open conversation goes. So you don't know which way it's going to go. But again, if you have prepared, you can say, all right, it can go either way. She can say, hell no, I'm not staying here. Or she can say, all right, tell me more. Let's work through it together because I really like you too. Those are pretty much the two options that can happen. And you can kind of prepare for that. But I will say, when you prepare, if you're that type of person, don't come off as robotic, because again, we're talking about authenticity. So don't go put your script through Chat GPT.
I'm sorry if that was loud. Oh my
I
God.
would say do that.
No,
it gives you ideas.
I was holding my tongue trying to show emotional intelligence, but I was sitting here going, you know what? I don't want to say this. This is anti my morals and everything, but put that shit in Chat GPT.
No.
It will give it to you succinctly. But the thing is, like, I know it's all about authenticity, but I think putting in something once in there and seeing how Chat GPT can make it succinct,
finesse it,
and then apply it to other things that you want to present or talk about. Just so you can have an example. It is a great learning tool, but you don't want to be a robot, obviously.
Don't want to be a robot, but also ChatGPT. If you don't write, if you just say, I'm going through this situation, write me a prompt and a script based on these things, it's going to sound like, again, everyone else. And it's going to use words that you don't normally use. And then you're going to be trying to remember that and read it off, and it's going to screw you up. So that's why I recommend,
just in case.
To counter that, I will say they may not be words that you use right now, but they may be words that you learn to use when trying to express yourself that you can then finesse. I used to be very anti giving routines or lines. I'm very pro training wheels because I think it's helpful because people don't have examples like the three of us around them all the time, right? They may have horrible examples of communicators. They don't know how to communicate in a better way. So if they don't have direct access to us, which they should and they could, but if they don't have access to us, then I'm going to go against you on this one. I am okay with them using ChatGPT as long as they take that, they practice it, and then they tweak it to make it sound more like themselves.
Yes,
if you're going to do that, fine. That's cool. But I'm be honest, I don't know too many people who do that, right?
Okay, so
I'm one of those people, and so is my husband. He uses ChatGPT for everything now because he's not a great communicator.
Yeah.
And
So
he's becoming better.
the danger is leaving the guy unsupervised who
Yeah.
isn't, able to gauge communication at all, and letting him just like put something in there and letting him run away with it. If you're not sure if you're emotionally intelligent, show it to somebody or say it to somebody
Yeah, have
Yeah.
and
someone
get
you
a
can run it by for
gauge.
sure. I
Yeah.
think that's the smart thing to do.
And
Yeah.
speaking of that, are there ways for guys to test or discover whether they're emotionally intelligent or not?
That's my question. Good one.
Good. I mean, there's a ton of emotional intelligence assessments that you can take. I offer them to my clients as well. But there are free things on like if you Google it, a free emotional intelligence assessment, you could do it that way. ChatGPT is good for those things too. So it can create you a survey that you be like, let me answer a few questions on this, and you just say, hey, I want to gauge my self awareness, my self management, my
Yeah.
social recognition, and my relationship management. Create me a survey of 30 questions. You can use ChatGPT for that and then answer it honestly, for sure. So those are some ways, but to really know if you're emotionally intelligent, not just from a competency standpoint, but from an action standpoint, I
Mm.
recommend going to people who know you, right? Who've seen you in action, who've had conversations with you, who've even had disagreements with you to see how you handle that stress of being, opposed, so to speak. That's the best way to really know if you're emotionally intelligent. From a social side, from a self side, one of the things I recommend is really, again, that introspection. Like when I go through these situations, if someone challenges me, am I comfortable with standing up and standing my ground on what my perspective is? Or do I automatically switch with no backing, with no facts? Am I a person that goes off of just my feelings? Or do I want to have someone bring and challenge me with facts so that I can say this is fact, this is the truth, and then this is just my truth? Because truth and fact are two totally different things, right? Our truths are different from what actually may happen. Our perception is our reality. So once you ask those questions and do that work of getting other people's perspectives, and then also sitting with yourself to say, what do I really show up as and what do I feel? Does that match? Then that's when you can kind of get a foundation on if you're emotionally intelligent or not, and then couple that with an assessment, and then that should give you a really great picture of where you can start with to kind of fix your emotional intelligence.
I love that. I think one of the easiest ways to recognize if you have emotional intelligence is about the way that you view people when they do things. You
Mm-hmm.
can either look at them as a bad person, right? Or any other negative label, or, and maybe I'm wrong about this, you can look, you can see the emotion that's driving the action. That's when I think you have a high level of intelligence, that you understand that there is some sort of sad emotion or fearful emotion or past experience
Mm-hmm.
that is creating that reaction. And when you can do that, I think that's when you can have more empathy for a
Absolutely.
person to be able to have a proper conversation. Because you said in our first meeting with each other, there's a line that you use. It's don't, oh God, what is it? Don't react. Oh God, what is it
Yeah.
again? Don't
Don't
react.
react,
What
respond.
is it?
Don't react, respond.
Don't react, respond.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is like that's the measurement for when, if you have emotional intelligence and when you have emotional intelligence, that you're not just reacting to the top level information that's being put in front of you, you're taking a moment to respond to the whole story that's in front of you.
Well,
Absolutely.
what I've
Oh, go ahead.
noticed in what I've noticed in my coaching with guys, because I work with them a lot on banter and communication, is that they're not adding meaning to things that people are saying. So if someone says they love the movie Kill Bill, they're not going, okay, that must mean this, this, and this about this person, or this could lead me to thinking XYZ. They're just going, okay. And it's like just drifting in and out, and they're not doing anything with it. So, do you ever work with men on processing what they're actually hearing and giving it meaning so that they can make the best conversational move going forward? So, if it's I've never seen Kill Bill, which is embarrassing because I love Quentin Tarantino, but and I love
That's
killing bills. No, but I I've never seen it. But if someone brought it up to me, I would have an inkling of, okay, this must say this about this person, and now I know I can drive the conversation in a way that will be enjoyable for me, but also for them.
Yeah, I think that well, I have worked to answer your question succinctly. Yes, I have. But what I realized is like a lot of people when they're in those interactions, they don't really know which direction to go, so they'll be like, "Oh, okay," and that's
Yeah,
it.
they just
Because
okay, right.
yeah, and what I recommend is like you said, if I haven't seen Kill Bill, I'll be like, oh, I haven't seen that one yet. Shoot me or whatever. You can crack a joke there, or you can just be like, I haven't seen that one yet. What makes you what's so interesting about it,
What
or
do you
something
like
like that?
about
What
it?
do you
Yeah.
like about it, right? Or if you had to describe it to someone who's never seen it, how would you describe it in two sentences? Just have fun with it, but like it prompts you. I believe in prompting. Like if I'm not sure where I should go, I'm always going to have a coaching conversation with that person. I'm going to ask them a question so I can have space and time to get some more feedback on what they want me to do with that. Or I can
I
say,
love that.
okay, Kill Bill. I know it's like this. Have you seen this movie? Whatever. There's so many different ways you can take conversations based on context. And I feel like that's why a lot of guys are saying, oh, okay, because we're not really good at picking up that context, that high context. We're good
Right.
at really
The
direct,
deep
low
the deeper meaning
Right.
behind it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly.
so
So
actually, I
women
have
are
something. I'm going
better
to
at
give.
high context than men. And that studies have
Yeah.
proven that time and time again.
Yeah, but there's reason for that, right?
Hmm.
Because it's not needed for men typically,
Hmm.
especially in the way that you communicate with each other. You don't need that in your relationships. But so when you do talk to other men who do have higher EQ, are you like, "Oh, that's so like are you refreshed now?" Like do you like okay, I'm going to take a step back.
Hmm.
So most men don't know that they need or want that type of communication, right? Because when they're working with other men, they don't expect that, they don't need that to form a type bond.
Hmm.
When you were in the military, you probably didn't need that type of communication. Now that you have it, do you think that it enhanced your relationships, or do you think, well, it's still not needed, but I use it because I like it with the women in my life? Like, is it not needed for men, or is it just not known for men?
It's absolutely needed. And here's a deeper reason why I say that. A lot of men struggle with mental health challenges and emotional challenges.
Yes.
And because we don't want to share that higher context, it's really hard for us to say when we need help or we need assistance or we're not okay. And we see that play out, sadly, through suicide and substance
Yes.
abuse and all these other things. There's a reason why, again, men have higher rates of that than women. And that's why it's so important for us to have this conversation for a relational standpoint from, having a mate, but also being able to share with your friends the support, like how you need support, how you need them to show up for you, and then being able to ask them how you can show up for them to support them. So with my friend group, we've worked on our emotional intelligence over the course of years, and we're now even able to say, man, I love you, right? And without any, I love you, bro. It doesn't have to be broed up. It could just say, hey, I love you. Hey, are you okay? Like, do you need anything from me? Those conversations weren't had previously because we didn't feel comfortable sharing those types of things because we felt, oh, that's not manly. That's not this. But then we
Right.
realized with the higher context that we also need to hear those things. It just was taboo for us to say them. So when you become emotionally intelligent, you understand like the societal views and pressures, those are something different from you, right, in your environment. And again, we can choose to respond intelligently by taking up that higher context and saying, hey, here's why it is important for us to share this information. Here's how more details matter in this conversation through
Right.
with one another. Here's how I can respectfully, say I don't agree with what you're saying, or you need to tighten up and get your shit together. Right. So we need to be able to have those conversations. It's just that, we tend to filter ourselves subconsciously or consciously on the other side. We err on the side of caution instead of erring on the side of actual impact.
Well, that's interesting because I always view male friendships as being stronger friendships than
Hmm.
female friendships.
Hmm.
So I was wondering if that was because they were void of that deeper connection, or if it had nothing to do with it. So that was an interesting response.
Well, men can connect differently, right? So if you ever go out and you notice like two guys who never met one another, it seems like they've known one another forever. We just connect differently, and I haven't
But
done
they
any
would
research
die
with
for
that.
each other. Like there's
Yeah.
certain, it's funny. So my husband would die for his friends. Like
Hmm.
and I know that they would do the same thing for him. Like if we ever separated, like I know his one friend would just hate me just because, even if I did nothing wrong, he's like, nope, your side on, like just because he's like so like diehard friendship. But
I would be curious to know what their conversations are like, right?
well,
Are
that's what I
they?
was gonna say to you. Like, what do they? I'm like, I'll say, hey, what are you talking about with your friend, or like, what do you talk about when you went out? Oh, nothing. This, and it's like very surface level. So it's always interesting to me that they don't bond more on connecting deeper. They bond more with time and experiences. But
Commonalities, right? Too,
yeah,
right? Because we share, like, say, we watch sports together, or we may not. A lot of men don't ask any questions when they watching sports, but like, that's my boy, right? Because
yeah,
we can go to these sports
we're rooting
events.
for the same
You
team.
know,
We scream
yeah,
at the same
exactly.
parts.
Right. So that's why it's important for us to really go deeper on the context, because as men we can bond on the simpler things. We don't need to talk and communicate per se
Right.
to form that bond, but for us to really get past that surface level and get to know one another's baselines, like who is this person truly, we have to start having those deeper conversations.
Yeah, I agree with you. So I want to give guys a little bit of an exercise, if that's okay. What would be the first starting point for men? Because I was thinking of an exercise as you were talking before, and I was even just thinking to tell guys to start writing things down about how they feel about certain things and what things bring up, because Christian's really big on associations, and you were talking about
Mhm.
giving context to things. So even if they had 5 different prompts of a movie, or just like things in their life that they enjoy or they like, and then giving them the task of writing half a page about what it means to them, how it makes them feel, and what impact that has had on their life. It doesn't have to be something serious. It could just, I was just thinking, like, what would be a good exercise to give to guys? Would that be a good exercise?
I mean, for me, like to get the most bang for your buck, I always recommend starting with your values.
Okay.
Oftentimes, we don't even know what we value. We're just going through life because we were told that this is what we need to do. So I like to do values assessments, and you can use exercises like Will of Life, or you can go and say, when was the when did I feel the best in my life? What was going on? What was I doing? Who was around me? You can do exercises like that. I feel like that gives the most bang for the buck, because it gets you to know you. And values
Yeah.
change, right, over time. So it's a
Yeah.
good time to just do that from time to time. Check in. Like, if I say money, like, why? Like you asked, why is that important for me? And what I realize is if I ask myself why 3 to 5 times, then I'm past that surface level and I get to the deeper seated rooted reason. And I feel like we don't do that enough. So that's where I would recommend start, and then I would take another step to get to know myself a little bit more. To say, if ABCDE journal. So that's one of the things where I have my clients do, and I would have them think about situations, think about how they reacted to that situation. What was the outcome? Did they act how they wanted to act, and what they learned from that? And when you do that for like a week, say we did it a week, we start to learn patterns, and we are patternistic beings. So when we start to learn patterns, then only then can you just start changing, and working on that emotional intelligence, how you show up in a daily basis. So those are the two that I would recommend they start with.
Okay.
And
I
and
love
what
that.
about the social, or I'm sorry, emotional intelligence in regard to reading other people, like an exercise for that? So saying to a girlfriend that you know, this is how I think you're feeling. Am I right? Am I spot on? Just kind of these random tests to see if he's picking up on emotions or feelings of someone. Is that a good idea? I'm just
If you're gonna do that, let them
spitballing.
know that you're
Yeah,
gonna
Yeah,
do,
right.
I
because
mean,
that might.
I'm trying to practice something right now.
Yes,
So
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah,
That's a
yeah.
huge
Let them
no,
know.
emotional.
I love
Preface it.
that.
But
So
one
you're
thing that
trying
you
to
can do,
say, shut the fuck up. Yeah.
right. One of the things you can do along those lines is the mirroring technique. And so if someone says something, you can say, so you said this and this, and you want this. Is that correct? Right. The mirroring technique helps you do that in practice. So if you're actually having a conversation and that gives you context, it gives you understanding and
Yeah.
clarity. So you can always do that. That's a way that I recommend,
I
like
love that.
starting with from a getting to know someone standpoint to make sure you have that clarity. And if they say, no, I was trying to say this, then you can go back and forth until you lock it in.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And then,
I'm going to wrap up this show. Oh, sorry.
okay,
Do you have one more
Marnie's going to
question?
wrap it up, but just right after I ask this question,
Yeah.
I'm like so paranoid because we're talking about emotional intelligence, and I feel like I have very high emotional intelligence, but right now I'm buckling under pressure and doing everything that I know I shouldn't be doing for emotional intelligence. Anyway, I'm asking this question, and it's in regard to men interacting with other people around them in front of the woman that they're going on a date with. That can show higher emotional intelligence, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. Higher or lower, depending on how you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Depending on what they're doing.
Right.
So
Like
what
punching each
level?
other in the balls maybe
Right.
wouldn't look great to the woman.
What
Some women,
level?
maybe I'd be like, ooh, great.
What level should men kind of perform up to? And it's authenticity is number one, so I don't want to use the word perform, but what level should they perform up to when, let's say, interacting with the bartender or interacting with the server or whoever's in their environment? It's like you want to show that you're caring about the other people, but not too much.
Mm-hmm.
So what does that look like? What's overboard?
I mean, I can, if you're putting up a facade, that woman's going to know. So I would say, again, like you said, authenticity, but it's really about respect in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
If you're respectful, then a woman, that's emotional intelligence. Now, if you're like that bartender is super busy and you're like, hey, asshole, get over here, right? Then
Yeah.
that shows that you're not emotionally intelligent because you're thinking you're self-centered, self-focused. So anytime you can remove self and not show up in that way, then you're showing that you can set aside ego, you can set aside being selfish and really focus on like what's at hand. And it's really about, when you think about that type of situation being social, it's about really acknowledging, like, is my reaction or my response, I should say, is it aligning with what's going on in this scenario? So that's how I would gauge it. Now, you don't have to be like, oh, excuse me, let me give you a $1,000 tip to show that I'm emotionally intelligent. Just act normal,
Mm-hmm.
and act normal, and just don't be over the top either way. That's what I would recommend. Don't be
Yeah.
like, oh, excuse me, Miss Bartender, may I have the drink? Just talk
Yes,
normally,
you don't have to be
be
exactly.
yourself. And emotional intelligence is really like the key here is self-awareness, being authentic, knowing who you are, knowing the best way for you to show up, knowing where your blind spots may be so you can kind of work on those, getting feedback from other people, including that woman that you're interested in, and then just stepping up, showing and giving the best that you have that in that moment.
I love that. Okay.
I
Thank
would
you
keep
so much.
going, but I know this is about emotional intelligence, so I'm going to be quiet.
Because emotionally, I have to get off and pee. No. Well, yes, it's true,
Pete,
but I also
yeah.
have to go somewhere. But yes, but Jevon, thank you so much for coming on and sharing this. I know there's so much more information that you can share, but I felt like what you gave to the guys today is really good information they can start using right away to start expressing and showing emotional intelligence to other people and really start honing it for themselves because it's such a powerful not just tool. I don't want to use the word tool, but it's just so powerful and like the impact that it can have on them personally is absolutely amazing. You're just taking pictures of your teeth. You're amazing. Person just got new teeth recently.
Really.
So just
Well, I
showing them off.
appreciate you having
Anyway,
me, Marnie. I really thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. And hey, fellas, like I said, listen a couple of times. Feel free to reach out to me and let me know that you heard me on here with Marnie and Kristen so we can have that conversation.
yeah. And where should they reach out to you or how should they reach out to you?
Yeah, JevonWooden.com, JevonWooden.com. You can reach out
Perfect.
there, or you can connect with me, LinkedIn. You'll see a light bulb next to my name once you search it. Just let me know. Either way, I would look forward to hearing from you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're awesome.
All right. New episodes of the How to Get a Girl podcast, formerly the Ask Women podcast, come out every Tuesday morning. Please go and subscribe to our show and share our show with other men that could use this advice. As Jevon was saying, many men are hurting themselves and doing horrible things because they have no emotional outlet. So change that for guys, change that for the men in your life. Start asking them questions and also give them a copy of this podcast so they themselves can learn how to express themselves in a way that can help them and also attract other people into their lives. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next week.